Acts chapter 25, verses 13 through 22, Festus tells Agrippa II about Paul. So Acts 25, verses 13 through 22. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came to Caesarea to salute Festus. And when they had been there many days, Festus declared Paul's cause unto the king, saying, There's a certain man left in bonds by Felix, about whom when I was at Jerusalem, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews informed me, desiring to have judgment against him. To whom I answered, It is not the command of the Romans to deliver any man to die before that he which is accused have the accusers face to face, and have license to answer for himself concerning the crime laid against him. Therefore, when they were come hither without any delay on the morrow, I sat on the judgment seat, and commanded the man to be brought forth. Against whom when the accusers stood up, they brought none accusation of such things as I supposed, but had certain questions against him of their own superstition, and of one Jesus which was dead, whom Paul affirmed to be alive. And because I doubted of such manner of questions, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem and there be judged of these matters. But when Paul had appealed to be reserved unto the hearing of Augustus, I commanded him to be kept till I might send him to Caesar. Then Agrippa said unto Festus, I would also hear the man myself. Tomorrow, said he, thou shalt hear him. So here, Festus tells Agrippa II, this is Herod Agrippa II, about Paul. We have three divisions. Number one, a customary visit to the new governor, Acts 25:13. Number two, capital punishment wanted by the Jews, verses 14 through 19. And number three, claim of trial before Caesar by Paul, verse 20-22. A little bit of background material. Paul had been a prisoner for 2 years under Felix. The reason why Felix kept him in bonds to please the Jews. And another reason, which didn't come to fruition, he was hoping to get a bribe by Paul, money, to set him free. Well, that never happened. So for 2 years he was there, not in a common prison, but in bonds, probably bonded to a Roman soldier for 2 years that way. Well, Felix was not a good man. His reign was not good. He actually had one of the high priests killed by assassination because the man criticized him publicly. So the Jews complained. He was replaced by Festus. So Festus comes to Caesarea Philippi, which is the capital of the province of Syria. And in 3 days he went to Jerusalem, and the Jews came to him, and they had a conversation. Now the Jews asked Festus, send for Paul and have him brought here so that we can judge him. But they had a secret agenda. Obviously, they didn't tell Festus that. They wanted to lie in wait to kill him. 2 years earlier, they had over 40 Jews conspired to neither eat nor drink until they killed Paul. So, no doubt, Festus didn't know about the plot, but he said no to their request. He said, in a few days, I'll go back from Jerusalem to Caesarea Philippi, and y'all can come, and then you can make your accusation. So probably somewhere 8 to 10 days, he went back, And then the Jewish leaders, they followed. And the next day, he sat on the judgment seat. And the Jews had all kinds of charges. None of them were proven. Defiling the temple, he didn't do that. Be against the Jewish law, Paul didn't do that. Cause riots among the Jews in the Roman Empire, he didn't do that. The Jews are the one that started the riots. So what he should have done is he should have let Paul go. He should have said, I find no fault with Paul. He has committed no crime against the Romans, and there's no reason to proceed. Paul is innocent, and I'll let him go. That's what he should have done, but that is not what he did. And so, to please the Jews, he asked Paul, are you willing to go to Jerusalem to be tried there? Paul knew that if he said yes to this, he probably would be dead in a few days. Not much chance of a fair trial in Jerusalem. Not to mention the Jews would probably have ambushed the party and killed Paul. So he did the only thing that he could do. I appeal to Caesar, which a Roman citizen could do. And Felix met with his advisors and agreed. Well, you've appealed to Caesar. Oh, Caesar, you will go. Really, that didn't mean that he would go and appear before whoever was Caesar, actually it was Nero, but it meant that he would go to Rome and be tried into the highest courts. So now we have a visitor with the new governor, verse 13, a customary visit to the new governor. Verse 13. And after certain days, King Agrippa and Bernice came to Caesarea to salute Festus. So Festus was over the province of Syria, which now at this time included Judea, which included Jerusalem. So here's a new man on the job. And let's talk a little bit about Agrippa and Bernice. So these were actually a brother and sister. Agrippa's father was Herod Agrippa the first, and he's the Herod Agrippa in Acts 12 that arrests John the apostle, the brother of I got that backwards. Who arrested James, the brother of John, an apostle, and had him beheaded. And when he saw that place of Jews, then he arrested Peter, no doubt wanting to do the same thing. That was his dad. I believe his great-grandfather was Herod the Great, who tried to kill Jesus when he was a baby. His dad, Agrippa I, Acts 12, died when Agrippa II was only 17. The Emperor Claudius had idea to make Agrippa II the king of Judea, but since he was too young, and Jerusalem and Judea was a hot spot, it was a trouble area because of the Jews. Then his advisor said, you don't need to do that. That's not wise. He's too young to handle that. So, no longer was Judea a kingdom with a king, but it was given to the province of Syria. And later on, Agrippa II became ruler. This happens in parts. He gets a ruler of an area north and northeast of the Sea of Galilee, and some towns around Sea of Galilee, and some towns from Perea, which was east of the Jordan River. Now here's the kicker. He was also given authority over the temple treasure and the right to appoint the high priest, even though Jerusalem was not in his jurisdiction. He was over the temple treasurer. Now that included being over the garb, the clothing that the high priest wore on the Day of Atonement. So Agrippa II built a palace on the Temple Mount above the temple, and this irked the Jews. And he changed the high priest several times, and that bothered the Jews. He renamed Caesarea Philippi, I believe it was Neronius, in honor of the Emperor Nero. Now let's talk about Bernice, his sister. There was one difference in the age between the two. Bernice, when she was only 13, married her uncle, Herod of Chalcis, and after he died, she lived with her brother, Agrippa II. And there was suspicion that they actually committed incest. She later married a man, and that didn't last, and so she went back to live with her brother, Agrippa II. The Herod, they had several that women married their uncles, so this was not a good family. This Herod Agrippa would reign about 50 years. He would be the last of the Herods to rule. Not a good family. But, since he and Festus, they have common government areas, Festus is over Jerusalem and Judea, but Agrippa II is over the temple treasurer and over who is high priest. So they have some commonalities there. And it was customary when your neighboring province or neighboring area gets a new ruler, it is customary for you to go and meet with him, and you talk and visit and kind of, learn the lay of the land and what is going on. So that's what happened. Then in verses 14 through 19, Festus tells Agrippa II about Paul, and really reveals to Agrippa II that the Jews, they wanted capital punishment for Paul. They really didn't want a trial. They just wanted him dead. So verses 14 through 19. And when they had been there many days, so they visited for many days, there in Caesarea Philippi, which was a capital of Samaria. Also, it was a capital of Agrippa's, where his capital was. That's interesting. So Festus, he declared Paul's cause or case on the king said, we got a man here, he's in bonds, and he was left here by my predecessor, Felix. And so I went to Jerusalem, and when I was there, the chief priests and the elders of the Jews, the other rulers, they gave me information about the man. Their desire was to have judgment against him. They didn't want a fair trial. They wanted judgment against Paul. And specifically, this next verse tells us they wanted him to be killed, executed. So verse 16, Festus says, to my answer, Paul was a Roman citizen. It's not the manner of the Romans to deliver any man to die before he is allowed to have his accusers and see them face to face and have opportunity to answer about what crime they have claimed that he committed. Well, that's not all that much different from today. A man that is accused, or a woman, has a right to a trial where the accusers come forth and they lay their charges, and the one who is charged gets a chance to give his case, and the judge, look at the evidence and hopefully will make a fair judgment. But Festus, they didn't want a fair judgment. They wanted Paul to die. And so he said, this is not the way that it should happen. By the way, let's go on to verse 17. So, therefore, when they come, Festus, he went back to Caesarea Philippi, and the Jewish leaders came, and he didn't put it off. On the next day, he sat on the judgment seat. That means they were in trial, and he commanded that Paul be brought forward, and he was. And then all the accusers, they stood up, and they laid all those probably same accusations. Paul brought a Gentile into the Jewish part of the temple, which he did not do. All is against the Jewish law, which he was done. Probably that Paul made riots among the Jews all throughout the Roman Empire, which he did not do, and made all these accusations. But Festus says, this isn't what I expected. They want this man dead. I figured, man, this is a bad guy. He's a criminal. He's probably a murderer, or maybe he's a robber, and he injures or kills people when he robs them. He's probably done something really bad, and that's the accusations he expected to hear. But he got nothing like that. Verse 19, but this was what it was about. They had certain questions against Paul of their own superstition. Now, the word for superstition is made up of two words, fear of a deity. You can translate that as superstition, or you translate that as religion. By the way, on Athens Hill, when Paul gave his message, they had all those temples of worship, all those gods in Athens. They had the Acropolis. And Paul could went over there, and they had a little sign that said, to the unknown God. And he said, the unknown God, this is the God that I serve who created everything. He told them, you are too superstitious, King James Version. Really, he's saying, you are very religious. You worship all of these gods. And this is the same word. So I don't believe he's saying that this is about a superstition. He's saying about the Jewish religion, by the way, was allowed under the Roman Empire by the Jews. It was questioned about the Jewish faith. And of one Jesus who was dead that Paul affirmed to be alive. The way that Festus says of one Jesus, that may be terminology of scorn. And it's about this one Jesus who the Jews said he was dead, but Paul affirmed he was alive, and other followers of Jesus. And it was about resurrection. And the Pharisees, in which Paul was, believed in the resurrection. And the high priest, the Sadducees, did not believe in the resurrection at all. Then really that was the main issue. In the book of Acts, the beginning of persecution against believers came from the high priest, the Sadducees, because they thought that Jesus rose from the dead, and they didn't believe in the resurrection of the dead. They wanted Paul dead. Again, thirdly, so Paul does all that he can do, and goes for his right to have a claim of a trial before Caesar in Rome, actually the higher courts, verses 20 through 22. So Festus was really confused. He said, because I doubted in such manner of questions, the word there for doubted means he was being perplexed. The word means to be in doubt which way to turn. So Festus really did not understand Christianity called really back then followers of the way, or the Nazarene sect. Evidently, he really did not understand what they believed, and he was perplexed, he was confused, and he didn't know what to do. So Paul has made an appeal to Caesar, and he's agreed to that, but when he sends Paul to Caesar Rome to be tried, he has to have documents of what are the charges against Paul. And he didn't understand about the resurrection, he didn't understand any of this stuff, and he was hoping Agrippa II, who knew more about the Jewish faith, that he could help him to write a letter telling what the charges were. So it says, because I had no idea about what this stuff was about, I asked him whether he would go to Jerusalem there because of these matters. Now what he left out, Luke put earlier, Luke said he did this to gain favor of the Jews. Now no doubt he had his doubts and didn't understand the Christian faith, but his motivation was to please the Jews. Verse 21. Paul knew this would not work, and they probably would kill him on the way. So Paul did all he could do. He appealed to be reserved under the hearing of Augustus. Now Augustus is Latin. It means revered or august one. It actually was not a man, but that was a title. That was a title for the emperor, as Caesar also was a title for the emperor of Rome, as Pharaoh in the Old Testament was a title for Egypt's king or ruling person. And what is interesting, the Greek word they used to translate the Latin Augustus as a notion of worship. And later on, the Roman emperors would demand to be worshipped, when this would be absolutely sickening to the Christians. But it would get even worse than that. Christians would be arrested and they would be brought forth, and they would say, you say that Caesar is Lord, or you'll be executed. Later on, this would happen, and many believers were executed because they would not say that Caesar was Lord, but Jesus was and is Lord. So Paul demanded his right to have a trial in Rome. So I commanded him to be kept here until I might send him to Caesar. And again, Caesar is a title for the ruler, the emperor. Verse 22, then Agrippa said to Festus, I'm guessing his thoughts. This really sounds interesting. You know what? I would like to hear this man, Paul, myself. I would like to hear him. I want to hear his words. So the Pharaoh said, Festus, you will hear him. And so we'll get that later on if we're still here. The Lord delays. 3 applications. Application number 1 is ask for help. When you need help, swallow your pride, ask for help. Festus didn't understand these things. He asked Agrippa II for help. So when you need help, ask for help. Not only others, which is what he did, but of course we know the ultimate help is from the Lord. But there are others who may be able to help us. Ask them for help and ask the Lord for help. Number 2, give help. Agrippa II was willing to help Festus. And here the case. We need to help others. Now, this book, we need to help others even if they don't ask. If we can help them and they don't ask for help, if they will let us, we need to help them. I know a lot of us sometimes we're too proud and we want to do things on our own and we don't ask for help when we need it. But sometimes we need to follow the Spirit's guidance and give people help when they need it. Number 3, don't compromise. Man, both Felix and Festus, they examined Paul and they saw that he wasn't a criminal. It's just the Jews hated him. The unbelieving Jews hated him and wanted him dead. Both of them should have rules said, Paul has committed no crime. Trial is over. I declare him innocent. Set him free. Felix didn't do that. Festus didn't do that. So Paul did all he could do appeal to Rome. Paul never compromised his faith. He never denied Jesus. And it cost him greatly. Here, 2 years in Caesarea Philippi, and nothing about his case. Beaten, stoned to the point of death. Shipwreck. Later he'll be beaten by a poisonous snake. I mean, he suffered greatly for the Lord Jesus, but he never compromised. That's the idea. Jesus said, anyone who wants to follow me, let him take up his cross and follow me. So let us take up our cross daily and follow Jesus. You hear this message, you don't know Jesus is Lord, don't delay. Let this be your day of salvation. And the days are short. I believe the 7-year tribulation is at hand, which means the rapture is even closer, and you don't want to live through the 7 years. If you don't know Jesus and you know that, and you know you need to, don't delay. Do that today. May God bless His word, and may God bless you. Gary, would you close us in prayer?